Alrighty, another update for the week. Going back over some of the stuff that happened this last week, and obviously for folks, the most visible thing is going to have been the extreme storm weather we had. Um, I had the time to go around the different cities throughout the county, all the way down to Bridge, out to Powers, up to Lakeside, and look at things after the storm hit, and it's pretty bad, obviously. Um, we've got crews working constantly right now. Our emergency manager slept in his office, I think it was Sunday night, keeping track of everything. So, fortunately, we have a lot of committed folks, but I've also heard people tell me this is the worst storm they've seen since. Some folks have said the 80s, some the 70s. One person even said back to 67, I believe it was. So it was bad. I've got a picture that I sent out to. We got inquiries from news agencies around the state, and I sent one of them a picture from the fairgrounds, which the fairgrounds has some damage. If anybody wants to volunteer on some of this cleanup, you can contact our emergency manager, Chip Delira, and he's also been looking for volunteers to assist. But down at the fairground, we've got a standard size chain link fence with the Y formation barbed wire at the top. And I've got a picture of that with a park bench resting on top of the wire because that's how high the water's got. We had a volunteer out there doing work at the time it really surged, and he had to swim for it to a house in the stormwater. So it got real rough in different parts of the county. If you didn't have to see any of that, that's very good, but it got rough. Um, so while you're out, be mindful of that, and if you see something you can help with, I mean, be good neighbors. Obviously, we all like to do that. I was out on the road looking at one place, and there was a big old rock sitting in the middle of the road, so I stopped where I was safe and moved it out of the way. So, to the extent you can do things safely, it's always appreciated by everybody. Um, I took my tour of the Shutters Creek site this week. I was thinking it was going to be Monday. It was actually Friday. So, one of the good things that's coming out of the conversations we're having is they're looking in their budget how they can fund maybe a half or maybe a whole deputy, kind of like what Weyerhaeuser already does for us. We have an officer that goes and patrols their grounds, and it pays for one more officer that we're able to have. And in the event of emergency, they can respond, but they also pay for a vehicle and different things. So it's another way of seeing how we can keep some positions paid for. Now, things are going to roll out over time. I had been talking with them about the carbon credits they plan to sell and making sure a portion of that money, preferably a large portion of that money, stays within the county because it's not generating jobs, it's not generating development, it's just the state's selling the existence of trees, and none of that money is going to fund the general fund. So that's what I talked to him about. That is probably 2 years out from my conversation with them before there's any sale of carbon credits. So it's something I'll stay on top of, making sure that we're included in the cut when this thing comes to be, but it's nothing that's going to help us in the immediate, and it's not going to help us in the next budget year, but hopefully the budget year thereafter and continuing forward. And then for the plans on the site itself, the company that's doing it has until the end of the summer to have their full proposal put in. So it'll be towards the end of summer we really know more about what is going on up at the Elliott Forest site, the Shutters Creek site. It was cool to tour because my grandpa was stationed there when it was an Air Force base, so it was neat, and we got some actual dates on things, rough dates, but still better dates than we had. And it helps us plan and budget. We know when there's even the possibility of money showing up. And then related to the officer, that's contingent upon their budget, which will be concluded at the end of June. So if they do plan to pay for a half one or a full one, it's not something we can budget for this cycle.
Let's see. One of the things about Shutter's Creek that was interesting, I learned more history about it, and I learned more history about it, and I'd kind of known, but you don't, unless you're really interacting with that system, you don't really know some of these things. They had trade schools there. They had shops where people could practice woodworking. They had people learning electrical, and it sounded like it was a pretty good deal for the prisoner side, and it was actual job training, which, kind of adds to the misfortune that it was closed, because we usually hear, and it's an important thing, if somebody goes to jail, they need to come out of it with some kind of job that they can do next. Otherwise, you're not really going to see progress. You're going to see recidivism, going back to jail. So it's also unfortunate they closed that, because it sounds like this was what the justice system is going for more so these days, is if somebody does end up in prison, that they come out with skills. And that's what this place was doing. So it's, unfortunate that got cut, and a little counterintuitive. Monday, we talked more about the dissolution of the Urban Renewal District out on the North Spit. That had been something I brought up. We had more conversations about it, so we know what a kind of unified message is we're going to have to the board of the URA, because I call it URA, it's URD, but depending on where you are, they say different things. So, quick overview: Urban Renewal District that the county has. The county can dissolve it at will. However, it currently has a board. It's administered through the port, who has representatives. I believe North Bend, Goose Bay have representatives. So what's going to happen next? Oh, and Rod and John are on that board. So they're going to propose, we all agreed on dissolution. So what I had wanted to do was under levy, and look, it was $2.8 million sitting in there. I kept saying 2.4, it was 2.8. I wanted to keep that by under levying and then using that on the North Spit for something that would be revenue generating. But, in further discussion, if we dissolve it, we still get $350,000 to the general fund. So the 2.8 would only have been able to be used on the North Spit. The $350,000 we could spend in the general fund on law enforcement or something like that. And as folks know, the deficit is $1.8 million so far. So it's a bad spot. It's not what I prefer, but also we don't have a lot of staff. So trying to use the 2.8 might have been, my eyes were bigger than our ability to really execute on it in any kind of timely fashion. So that's what's probably going to happen now, is it's just going to be dissolved outright. And that's only the county's one. So only the North Spit. That doesn't affect the urban renewal districts in any of the cities. That's their choice to make how they want to handle that. Part of what I'm doing with that, though, the reason it goes from 2.8 to 350 is overlapping taxing districts, and chunks get reallocated back out to those districts. State school fund. Clear up a confusion that was brought up, or that I perpetuated at one point because I said it wrong. The taxes we collect here do not return to the state, but the state, based on money that our school district receives, may choose to allocate less next time. So the net outcome is that when the tax dollars go back to the schools, which is about 1.4 million of that number, more than that, it's more than half of the 2.8 goes to school districts. And the state then could choose not to issue just another 1.4 next year, and they would be net neutral. I'm talking with the Oregon Education Department about not doing that. Basically, let the taxes flow back to our school district and still allocate them their normal amount of money next time. Because if that money can stay with the school districts, they can work on projects, and it's one less reason they have to ask you for levies. If they've got
the money through this. They don't need to ask for a levy for construction on something as long as it's under that dollar amount. So that's another goal, is to at least keep the money local. I did the tour of the damage, and that really went through the short stuff I had on here because I wanted to try and get these out quickly. Something I got a message earlier. We're going to be talking with the roadmaster at 11 o'clock in Coquille. I think it's in the Owens building. Somebody told me Wheeler, but Owens is where we hold meetings, so it should be there. That's what my calendar says. And we're going to talk about some weight restrictions. One, on the local access roads, because they're not maintained by the county. I think we've got 100 miles of local access roads. And that just is a thing that's out there. They're lesser used roads. And then weight restrictions during wet weather seasons. So this kind of thing would impact your trucking field, the trucking industry, which in turn affects pretty much everything because you got to move it with trucks, but mostly timber, that sort of thing. So yeah, if folks are interested in that, I know we're going to have some folks from the trucking industry at the meeting tomorrow to let us know what they're thinking on it as well, make sure it's all reasonable. As folks might know, I worked for a trucking company for a little while on the administrative side. I did paperwork and money because, that's what I do. But, yep, that should cover everything for now. We'll have more updates for you as the week progresses. I think it's Saturday. I'm going to have to go to Astoria for the Ways and Means Committee with the House, State House, to advocate with them for some of the things we need. So, I'll still do my update next Sunday. Alrighty, we'll see you all later.